What we're going to describe has been called the secret of secrets, the esoteric wisdom that leads to Samadhi. Samadhi is the goal of all spirituality, its union with the Source. The truth of who or what you are, the truth that transcends the limited mind, cannot be seen by means of the limited mind. The still point cannot be reached by means of movement. If you want to realize the still point beyond thinking, let go of all interest in thoughts and sensations, all preferences, all phenomena generated by the mind and senses, and rest in naked awareness. There are two fundamental dimensions to existence in this moment. There's that which is changing and that which is unchanging. Thoughts and sensations are a field of constantly changing phenomena. What is unchanging is the awareness of that field of change. We are usually so caught up in the field of change, fixated on its objects, that we ignore the dimension of awareness. So we start our investigation by becoming aware of awareness, being conscious of consciousness. The challenge with resting in awareness for long periods of time is that most people have not cultivated the concentration and equanimity to stay in awareness. We are addicted to comfort, and the limited mind will want to escape from this exercise. It will find it profoundly uncomfortable and will create every type of hindrance or distraction. There are two primary knots that bind us to ego identification. The body is attached to comfort, and the mind wants to know. If we continue to seek the comfort of the body and continue to seek knowing with the mind, we will never move beyond the limited mind and body. We will remain like a herd animal, a creature that craves pleasure and avoids pain, endlessly responding to stimulus, endlessly doing, and unaware of the dimension of being. To be aware, to be fully attentive to what is happening without the mediation of egoic conditioning, without concepts, without controlling, manipulating, or distortion, without the filtering of the limited mind, is to be present without choosing. Present without choosing, and therefore without a chooser. Every time the mind moves without your willing, even the tiniest movement, it is due to filtering through the conditioning of the self-structure. The path leads to cessation of the entire whirlpool of mind. To realizing all levels of self as empty. How do I drop all doing? How do I drop mind activity? Listen closely This is the paradox. The limited egoic mind hears that question and wants to know how. But that limited mind can't do it. The mind will always fail in any attempt to realize stillness, because the mind is movement. The mind itself is movement. It is an endless process of doing. We have to make the shift from doing to being. The you that you think you are is a process, a constant movement, a collection of patterns. That you has to die. The pathological pattern of you has to end for Samadhi to be realized. Let that sink in. Spiritual teachers have given the instruction to reach Samadhi. Be still and know. Be still and know the true self, primordial awareness beyond name and form. Be still and know that you are God. What exactly do they mean? What is it that becomes still? Obviously, no one's physical body can become absolutely still, existing within time and space, because time-space itself is movement. Time-space is mind. The universe is big mind, or logos. The first Hermetic principle is that the all is mind, the universe is mental. If the universe is mind and mind is movement, how can I be still and know? How can you be still on a globe spinning 1,000 miles per hour around its axis? Spinning 67,000 miles per hour around the sun. Moving 500,000 miles per hour around the galaxy, and millions more through the universe. Your heart is beating, cells are moving inside, food digesting, the brain producing brain waves. Your blood is pumping, energy is moving. How can we be still? When the spiritual masters say, be still and know, they must be talking about something else, something beyond time and space, something beyond the physical and mental. What is meant by stillness is something that we have no word for in our modern language system. The Sanskrit language, the language of the yogis, has more precise terms which point to the non-dual. The term shunyata is often translated as voidness, stillness, or emptiness. It is what is used in connection with anatta, or no self, the realization of Buddha nature. Stillness is maybe the closest English word, but it is inadequate to describe something that is not of this dualistic world. What is actually realized is the primordial consciousness, which is beyond stillness and movement, beyond time. It is eternal, the ground of your being, the essential nature of reality that does not change. Actually, it is beyond change and the changeless. When our true nature is realized, it becomes obvious that stillness and movement are a duality created by the mind. Silence and noise are a duality created by the mind. Everything is already inherent within that primordial stillness. The movement of the world is identical to stillness. Be still and know. Be in motion and know. It is all emptiness dancing. This is not something philosophical, but an entirely different way of interfacing with the world. Actually, it's about dropping the interface. Dropping the reducing valve, which is the self-structure, and experiencing your true nature unmediated by the limited mind. The so-called outer world is transcended by realizing stillness, which, when realized, includes that which it transcends. The duality of stillness and movement collapses. Realizing Samadhi, this great awakening, is just the beginning of the path. Patanjali says that the entire endeavor of yoga is aimed at the cessation of the whirlpool of the mind. Chitta vritti nirodha. You could say it is the cessation of karma, the cessation of deep unconscious patterns on many different levels. When we realize our true nature, we temporarily cease our identification and reaction to the mind. It's like pulling the plug on a fan. When we pull the plug on a fan, the inertia of the fan's blades keeps it going. As long as we don't plug the fan back in, it will eventually come to stillness. Karma is simply the tendency for energy to follow established pathways. When consciousness slips back into pattern, it's like plugging in the fan. Energy follows consciousness. Energy goes back into the old patterns. Another way of describing it is through the law of inertia. A mind in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. In the matrix of the conditioned mind that we call the universe, energy and thought cycle through fractal labyrinths that exist on a continuum from micro to macro levels, branching and exploring endlessly. All spiritual practice is an intervention, an outside force, a consciousness which diverts energy from flowing in the conditioned pathways. You have to be willing to change your life. Someone can do all the meditation in the world, but if they go back to their same old patterns, their same old routine, then the wiring remains in place. Our unconscious motivations must be excavated and faced. If, through great perseverance and determination, we manage to not plug in the fan, then there is an actual cessation of the vrittis, a profound silence that is born within the self-structure. Every time we identify with and react to some preference produced by the mind, we plug the fan back in. The longer we remain in awareness, the more the samskaras are purified, the more the fan slows down, and the human vessel becomes more permeable to awareness, the more we become empty of self. Samadhi is an ancient Sanskrit word for which there's no modern equivalent. There's a fundamental challenge with making a film about Samadhi. Samadhi points to something that can't be conveyed on the level of mind. This film is simply the outer manifestation of my own inner journey. The intention is not to teach you about Samadhi or provide information for your mind, but to inspire you to directly discover your true nature. Samadhi is relevant now more than ever. We are at a time in history where we have not only forgotten Samadhi, but we've forgotten what we forgot. This forgetting is Maya, the illusion of the self. As humans, most of us live immersed in our daily lives, with little thought of who we are, why we are here, or where we're going. Most of us have never realized the true self, the soul, or what the Buddha called anatta, that which is beyond name and form, beyond thinking. As a result, we believe we are these limited bodies. We live in fear, either conscious or unconscious, that the limited self-structure that we are identified with will die. In today's world, the vast majority of people who are engaged in religious or spiritual practices, such as yoga, prayer, meditation, chanting, or any kind of ritual, are practicing techniques which are conditioned, which means they are just part of the ego construct. The seeking and the activity isn't the problem. Thinking you have found the answer in some external form is the problem. Spirituality, in its most common form, is no different than the pathological thinking that is going on everywhere. It is a further agitation of the mind, more human doing as opposed to human being. The ego construct wants more money, more power, more love, more of everything. Those on the so-called spiritual path desire to be more spiritual, more awake, more equanimous, more peaceful, more enlightened. The danger for you watching this film is that your mind will want to acquire Samadhi. Even more dangerous is that your mind might think it has acquired Samadhi. Whenever there's a desire to attain something, you can be sure it's the ego construct at work. Samadhi is not about attaining or adding something more to yourself. To realize Samadhi is to learn to die before you die. Life and death are like yin and yang, an inseparable continuum, endlessly unfolding with no beginning and no end. When we push away death, we also push away life. When you experience the truth directly of who you are, there's no longer any fear of life or death. We're told who we are by our society and our culture. And at the same time, we're slaves to the deeper unconscious biological craving and aversion that governs our choices. The ego construct is nothing more than the impulse to repeat. It's simply the path that energy once took, and the tendency for the energy to take that path again, whether it is positive or negative for the organism. There are endless levels of memory or mind, spirals within spirals. When your consciousness identifies with this mind or ego construct, it ties you to social conditioning, which you could call the matrix. There are aspects of the ego that we can be conscious of, but it's the unconscious, the archaic wiring, the primal existential fears that are actually driving the whole machine. Endless patterns of grasping towards pleasure and avoidance of pain are sublimated into pathological behaviors. Our work, our relationships, our beliefs, our very thoughts, and our whole way of living. Like cattle, most humans live and die in passive subjugation, feeding their lives to the matrix. We live lives locked into narrow patterns, lives often filled with great suffering, and it never occurs to us that we can actually become free. It is possible to let go of the life that has been inherited from the past, to live the one that is waiting to come forth through the inner world. We were all born into this world with biological conditioned structures, but without self-awareness. Often, when you look into a young child's eyes, there's no trace of self, only luminous emptiness. The person one grows into is a mask worn over consciousness. Shakespeare said, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players." In an awakened individual, consciousness shines through the personality, through the mask. When you are awake, you don't become identified with your character. You don't believe that you are the masks that you are wearing. But nor do you give up playing a role. When we are identified with our character, our persona, this is Maya, the illusion of the self. Samadhi is awakening from the dream of your character in the play of life. "2,400 years after Plato wrote the Republic, humanity is still making its way out of Plato's cave. In fact, we may be more transfixed by illusions than ever. Plato had Socrates describe a group of people who lived chained in a cave all their lives, facing a blank wall. All they could see were shadows projected on the wall by the things passing in front of a fire which was behind them. This puppet show became their world. According to Socrates, the shadows were as close as the prisoners would ever get to seeing reality. Even after being told about the outside world, they continued to believe that the shadows were all that is. Even if they suspected there was something more, they were unwilling to leave what was familiar. Humanity today is like the people who have only seen the shadows on the cave wall. The shadows are analogous to our thoughts. The world of thinking is the only world that we know, but there is another world that's beyond thinking, beyond the dualistic mind. Are you willing to leave the cave? To leave all that you have known, to find out the truth of who you are? In order to experience Samadhi, it's necessary to turn attention away from the shadows, away from the thoughts, towards the light. When a person is only used to darkness, then they must gradually become accustomed to the light. Like acclimatizing to any new paradigm, it takes time and effort, and a willingness to explore the new, as well as shed the old. The mind can be likened to a trap for consciousness, a labyrinth or a prison. It is not that you are in prison, you are the prison. The prison is an illusion. If you are identified with an illusory self, then you are asleep. Once you are aware of the prison, if you fight to get out of the illusion, then you're treating the illusion as if it's real, and you still remain asleep. Except now the dream becomes a nightmare. You'll be chasing and running from shadows forever. Samadhi is awakening from the dream of the separate self, or the egoic construct. Samadhi is awakening from identification with the prison that I call me. You can never actually be free, because wherever you go, your prison is there. Awakening is not about getting rid of the mind or the matrix. On the contrary, when you're not identified with it, then you can experience the play of life more fully, enjoying the show as it is, without craving or fear. In the ancient teachings, this was called the divine game of Leela, the game of playing in duality. Human consciousness is a continuum. On one extreme, humans are identified with the material self. On the other extreme is Samadhi, the cessation of self. Every step we take on the continuum towards Samadhi brings less suffering. Less suffering does not mean life is free from pain. Samadhi is beyond the duality of pain and pleasure. What it means is that there is less mind, less self creating resistance to whatever unfolds. And that resistance is what creates suffering. Realizing Samadhi even once allows you to see what is at the other end of the continuum, to see that there is something other than the material world and self-interest. When there is an actual cessation of the self-structure in Samadhi, there is no egoic thought, no self, no duality, yet there is still the I am, anatta, or no self. In that emptiness is the dawn of prajna, or wisdom. The understanding that the immanent self is far beyond the play of duality, beyond the entire continuum. The immanent self is timeless, unchanging, always now. Enlightenment is the merging of the primordial spiral, the ever-changing manifested world, or lotus, in which time unfolds, with your timeless being. Your inner wiring grows like an ever-unfolding flower as you disidentify with the self, becoming a living bridge between the world of time and the timeless. Merely realizing the immanent self is only the beginning of one's path. Most people will have to experience and lose samadhi countless times in meditation before they are able to integrate it into other facets of life. It's not unusual to have profound insights into the nature of your being during meditation or self-inquiry, only to find yourself once again falling back into old patterns, forgetting the truth of who you are. To realize that stillness or emptiness in every facet of life, every facet of oneself, is to become emptiness, dancing as all things. Stillness is not something separate from movement. It is not opposite to movement. In Samadhi, stillness is recognized to be identical with movement. Form is identical to emptiness. This is nonsensical to the mind, because mind is the coming into being of duality. René Descartes, the father of Western philosophy, is famous for the saying, "I think, therefore I am." No other phrase more clearly encapsulates the fall of civilization and the full-scale identification with the shadows on the cave wall. Descartes' error, like the error of almost all humans, was the equating of fundamental being with thinking. At the beginning of his most famous treatise, Descartes wrote that almost everything can be called into doubt. He can doubt his senses and even his thoughts. Likewise, in the Kalama Sutra, the Buddha said that in order to ascertain the truth, one must doubt all traditions, scriptures, teachings, and all the content of one's mind and senses. Both of these men started with great skepticism, but the difference was that Descartes stopped inquiring at the level of thinking, while the Buddha went deeper. He penetrated beyond the deepest levels of the mind. Maybe, if Descartes had gone beyond his thinking mind, he would have realized his true nature, and Western consciousness would be very different today. Instead, Descartes described the possibility of an evil demon that could be keeping us under a veil of illusion. Descartes did not recognize this evil demon for what it was. As in the movie The Matrix, we could all be hooked up to some elaborate program, feeding us an illusory dream world. In the movie, humans lived out their lives in the Matrix, while on another level they were merely batteries, feeding their life force to the machines, which used their energy for their own agenda. People always want to blame something outside themselves for the state of the world or for their own unhappiness, whether it's a person, a particular group or country, religion, or some kind of controlling Illuminati, like Descartes' evil demon or the sentient machines in the Matrix. Ironically, the demon Descartes envisioned was the very thing that he defined himself by. When you realize Samadhi, it becomes clear that there is a controller. There is a machine, an evil demon leeching your life day after day. The machine is you. Your self-structure is made up of many little conditioned subprograms, or little bosses. One little boss that craves food, another craves money, another status, position, power, sex, intimacy. Another wants consciousness or attention from others. The desires are literally endless and can never be satisfied. We spend a lot of our time and energy decorating our prisons, succumbing to pressures to improve our masks and feeding these little bosses, making them more powerful. Like drug addicts, the more we try to satisfy the little bosses, the more we end up craving. The path to freedom is not self-improvement, or somehow satisfying the self's agenda, but it's a dropping of the self's agenda altogether. Some people fear that awakening their true nature will mean that they lose their individuality and enjoyment of life. Actually, the opposite is true. The unique individuation of the soul can only be expressed when the conditioned self is overcome. Because we remain asleep in the matrix, most of us never find out what the soul actually wants to express. The path to Samadhi involves meditation, which is both observing the conditioned self, that which changes, and realizing your true nature, that which does not change. When you come to your still point, the source of your being, then you await further instructions without any insistence on how your outer world has to change. Not my will, but higher will be done. If the mind only tries to change the outer world to conform with some idea of what you think the path should be, it's like trying to change the image in a mirror by manipulating the reflection. To make the image in a mirror smile, you obviously can't manipulate the reflection. You have to realize the you that is the authentic source of the reflection. Once you realize the authentic self, it doesn't mean that anything on the outside necessarily needs to change. What changes is the conscious, intelligent inner energy, or prana, which is freed from conditioned patterns and becomes available to be directed by the soul. You can only become aware of the soul's purpose when you are able to watch the conditioned self and its endless pursuits, and let them go. In Greek mythology, it was said that the gods condemned Sisyphus to repeat a meaningless task for all eternity. His task was to endlessly push a boulder up a mountain, only to have it roll down again. The French existentialist and Nobel Prize-winning author, Albert Camus, saw the situation of Sisyphus as a metaphor for humanity. He asked the question, how can we find meaning in this absurd existence? As humans, we are toiling endlessly, building for a tomorrow that never arrives. And then we die. If we truly realize this truth, then we will either go mad if we are identified with our egoic personas, before we will awaken and become free. We can never succeed in the outer struggle because it's just a reflection of our inner world. The cosmic joke, the absurdity of the situation becomes clear when there's a complete and utter failure of the egoic self to awaken through its futile pursuits. In Zen, there is a saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Before enlightenment, one must roll the ball up the hill. After enlightenment, one must also roll the ball up the hill. What has changed? The inner resistance to what is. The struggle has been dropped, or rather, the one who struggles has been realized to be illusory. The individual will, or individual mind, and divine will, or higher mind, are aligned. Samadhi is ultimately a dropping of all inner resistance to all changing phenomena without exception. The one who is able to realize inner peace, irrespective of circumstance, has attained true Samadhi. You drop resistance not because you condone one thing or another, but so that your inner freedom is not contingent on the outer. It's important to note that when we accept reality as it is, it doesn't necessarily mean that we stop taking action in the world, or we become meditating pacifists. Actually, the opposite can be true. When we're free to act without being driven by unconscious motives, then it is possible to act in alignment with the Tao, with the full force of our inner energy behind us. Many will argue that in order to change the world and bring about peace, we need to fight harder against our perceived enemies. Fighting for peace is like shouting for silence. It just creates more of what you don't want. These days there's a war against everything. A war against terror, a war against disease, a war against hunger. Every war is actually a war against ourselves. The fight is part of a collective delusion. We say that we want peace, but we continue to elect leaders who engage in war. We lie to ourselves, saying that we are for human rights, but continue to buy products made in sweatshops. We say we want clean air, but we continue to pollute. We want science to cure us of cancer, but won't change our self-destructive habitual behaviors that make us more likely to be sick. We delude ourselves that we are promoting a better life. We don't want to see our hidden parts that are condoning suffering and death. The belief that we can win a war against cancer, hunger, terror, or any enemy that was created by our own thinking and behavior actually lets us continue to delude ourselves that we don't have to change the way we operate on this planet. The inner world is where the revolution must first take place. Only when we can directly feel the spiral of life within will the outer world come into alignment with the Tao. Until then, anything we do will add to the chaos already created by the mind. War and peace arise together in an endless dance. They are one continuum. One half cannot exist without the other. Just as light cannot exist without dark, and up cannot exist without down. The world seems to want light without darkness, fullness without emptiness, happiness without sadness. The more the mind gets involved, the more fragmented the world becomes. Every solution that comes from the egoic mind is driven by the idea that there is a problem, and the solution becomes an even greater problem than what it was trying to solve. What you resist persists. Human ingenuity creates new antibiotics, only to find nature getting more cunning as bacteria get stronger. Despite our best efforts in the ongoing fight, the prevalence of cancer is actually increasing. The number of hungry people in the world steadily grows. The number of terrorist attacks worldwide continues to rise. What's wrong with our approach? Like the sorcerer's apprentice from Goethe's poem, we have taken hold of a great power, but we do not have the wisdom to wield it. The problem is that we do not understand the tool that we are using. We do not understand the human mind and its proper role and purpose. The crisis is born of the limited, conditioned way in which we think, the way we feel and experience life. Our rationalism has robbed us of our ability to recognize and experience the wisdom of many ancient cultures. Our egoic thinking has robbed us of the ability to feel the depth and profound sacredness of life, the numinosity of life, and to realize entirely different levels of consciousness, which are now almost lost to humanity. In the ancient Egyptian tradition, netters were archetypal forms whose characteristics could be embodied by those who purified their physical and spiritual bodies in such a way that they were fit to house higher consciousnesses. The original netter, or the divine principle of this wisdom, was known as Thoth, or Tehuti, often depicted as a scribe with the head of a bird, or ibis, and represented the origin of all knowledge and wisdom. Thoth could be described as the cosmic principle of thinking, or thought. Thoth gave us language, concepts, writing, mathematics, and all the arts and manifestations of the mind. Only those who had gone through special training were allowed to access Thoth's sacred knowledge. The Book of Thoth is not a physical book, but is the wisdom of the Akashic or etheric realm. Legend tells that Thoth's knowledge was deeply hidden in a secret place within every human being, and was protected by a golden serpent. The archetypal or perennial myth of the serpent or dragon guarding a treasure is one that permeates many cultures, and has been called by names such as Kundalini Shakti, Chi, Holy Spirit, and inner energy. The golden serpent is the egoic construct which is bound in the inner energies, and until it's mastered and overcome, the soul will never be able to attain the true wisdom. It was said that the Book of Thoth brought nothing but suffering to any individual who read it, even though they would find the secrets of the gods themselves and all that is hidden within the stars. What must be understood is that the book brought suffering to any individual who read it, any ego that tried to control it. In the Egyptian tradition, awakened consciousness was represented by Osiris. Without this awakened consciousness, any knowledge or understanding attained by the limited self would be dangerous, disconnected from higher wisdom. The eye of Horus had to be open. The esoteric meaning that we find here is similar to the more familiar story of the fall in the Garden of Eden. The Book of Thoth parallels the tree of knowledge of good and evil, whose fruit Adam and Eve were tempted to eat. Humanity, of course, has already eaten the forbidden fruit, already opened the Book of Thoth. and has been cast out of the garden. The serpent is a metaphor for the primordial spiral that extends from the microcosm to the macrocosm. Today, the serpent is living as you. It is the egoic mind expressed as the manifested world. We have never before had access to so much knowledge. We've gone deep into the material world, even finding the so-called God particle. But we've never been more limited, more ignorant of who we are and how to live. And we do not understand the mechanism by which we create suffering. Our thinking has created the world as it is now. Whenever we label something as good or bad, or create a preference in our mind, it's due to the coming into being of egoic structures, or self-interests. The solution is not to fight for peace or conquer nature, but to simply recognize the truth. That the very existence of the ego structure creates duality, a split between self and other, mine and yours, man and nature, inner and outer. The ego is violence. It requires a barrier, a boundary from the other in order to be. Without the ego, there's no war against anything. There's no hubris. There's no overreaching nature to create profit. These external crises in our world reflect a serious inner crisis. We don't know who we are. We are completely identified with our egoic identities, consumed by fears, and are cut off from our true nature. Races, religions, countries, political affiliations, and any group that we belong to all reinforce our egoic identities. Almost every group that exists on the planet today wants to claim its perspective as true and correct, as we do on an individual level. By claiming the truth as its own, the group perpetuates its own existence, in the same way that an ego or self-structure defines itself against other. Now, more than ever, different realities and polarized belief systems are coexisting on Earth. It is possible for different people to experience completely different thoughts and emotional reactions to the very same external phenomena. In the same way, samsara and nirvana, or heaven and hell, are two different dimensions occupying the very same world. An event that may appear apocalyptic to one person could be seen as a blessing to another. So what is becoming obvious is that your external circumstances don't have to affect your inner world in any particular way. To realize Samadhi is to become a self-propelled wheel, to become autonomous, a universe unto oneself. Your experience of life is not contingent on changing phenomena. An analogy can be made with Metatron's cube. Metatron is mentioned in various ancient Christian, Islamic, and Jewish texts, and is archetypally related to the Egyptian Neter Thoth, as well as Hermes Trismegistus of Greece. Metatron is intimately connected with the Tetragrammaton. The Tetragrammaton is the fundamental geometric pattern, the template or primordial emanation of physical reality, which has been called the Word of God or the Logos. Here we see a two-dimensional representation of the figure, but if you look a certain way, you see a 3D cube. When you see the cube, nothing has changed in the figure, but your mind has added a new dimension to your seeing. Dimensionality, or one's perspective, is simply a matter of becoming habituated to a new way of perceiving the world. Upon realizing Samadhi, we become free of perspective, or free to create new perspectives, because there's no self invested in or attached to a particular viewpoint. The greatest minds in human history have often pointed to levels of thought beyond the limited self-structure. Einstein said, "The true measure of a human being is determined primarily by the measure and sense in which he has attained liberation from the self." So it's not that thinking in the existence of the self is bad. Thinking is a wonderful tool when the mind is in service to the heart. In Vedanta, it is said that the mind makes a good servant, but a poor master. The ego perpetually filters reality through language and labels, and is constantly judging, preferring one thing over another. When the mind and senses are your master, they will create endless suffering, endless craving and aversion, locking us into the matrix of thinking. If you want to realize Samadhi, do not judge your thoughts as good or bad, but find out who you are prior to thought, prior to the senses. When all labels are dropped, then it is possible to see things as they are. The moment a child is told what a bird is, if they believe what they're told, then they never see a bird again. They only see their thoughts. Most people think that they are free, conscious, and awake. But if you believe you are already awake, then why would you do the difficult work to attain what you believe you already have? Before it becomes possible to awaken, it is necessary to accept that you are asleep, living in the matrix. Examine your life honestly, without lying to yourself. Are you able to stop your robotic, repetitive life patterns if you want to? Can you stop seeking pleasure and avoiding pain? Are you addicted to certain foods, activities, or pastimes? Are you constantly judging, blaming, criticizing yourself and others? Does your mind incessantly seek out stimulus, or are you completely fulfilled just being in silence? Do you react to how people think about you? Are you seeking approval and positive reinforcement? Do you somehow sabotage situations in your life? Most people will experience their lives the same way today as they will tomorrow, and a year from now, and 10 years from now. When you begin to observe your robot-like nature, you become more awake. You begin to recognize the depth of the problem. You are completely and utterly asleep, lost in a dream. Like the inhabitants of Plato's cave, most who hear this truth will not be willing or capable of changing their lives because they are attached to their familiar patterns. We go to great lengths justifying our patterns, burying our heads in the sand rather than facing the truth. We want our saviors, but we are not willing to get up on the cross ourselves. What are you willing to pay to be free? Realize that if you change your inner world, you must be prepared to change the outer life. Your old structure and your old identity must become the dead soil out of which new growth comes. The first step to awakening is to realize that we are identified with the matrix of the human mind, or the mask. Something within us must hear this truth and be roused from its slumber. There's a part of you, something timeless, that has always known the truth. The matrix of the mind distracts us, entertains us, keeps us endlessly doing, consuming, grasping, in a cycle of craving and aversion with constantly changing forms, keeping us from the flowering of our consciousness, our evolutionary birthright, which is Samadhi. Pathological thinking is what passes for normal life. Your divine essence has become enslaved, identified with a limited self-structure. The great wisdom, the truth of who you are, is buried deep within your being. J. Krishnamurti said, "It is no measure of one's health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." Identification with the egoic mind is the sickness, and Samadhi is the cure. The saints, sages, and awakened beings throughout history have all learned the wisdom of self-surrender. How is it possible to realize the true self? When you peer through the veil of Maya and let go of the illusory self, what is left?
You don't have to be at a point in your life where you feel like you're hanging on by a thread to go and speak with a therapist. As a licensed therapist,
Didn't hear me at all. Wow. So you didn't hear anything that I said that whole time? That's usually wow. That's good. That's good stuff. I was just basically narrating what we just watched. I'm guessing none of it was heard. Basically, I was saying that we just watched Samadhi movie from 2017, Part 1, Maya, the Illusion of the Self. Part 2 is called It's Not What You Think, and if I'm not mistaken, it is a 3-part series. Not sure what the third part is called, but I wasn't gonna watch that tonight. Um, oh man, it really sucks when I'm muted. I can't remember what else I said, but long story short, faithful that y'all are doing well and having a great weekend. Not weekend, but strengthened uh, to lead you into the weekdays, not in a weekdays. Once again, and it's a loop within a loop within a loop on this calendar that we adhere to. Some do anyway. Most do. Anyway, peace, prosperity, and pineal power. I'm going to keep this one short tonight. This video here that we were watching, how sacred geometry is embedded in your DNA. So let's start it over again, since we were only 40 seconds into it. And yeah, much love. Sorry about that little tech glitch there. Much love, folks. See you soon. That you can be sure of. Take care. It's always great to see new names. So shout out to Rothroads LLC. I hope that business is going great. Much love and take care. I'll be back soon. Please subscribe, like, and share. All those things. I never say that, but why not?
auto insurance all seems the same until it's time to use it. With USAA, it's easy to file claims, schedule repairs, and access roadside assistance right through your app. Or you could take your chances somewhere else. Get a quote today.
So that was how sacred geometry is embedded in your DNA, in our DNA. I guess a samadhi meditation would be an appropriate closeout. So let's see here. I think this page should have some good ones, I would imagine. Now, to be fair, uh, I don't know much about this channel per se, but from the films I've watched, and they were again from years ago. Uh, I would say I didn't get much agent vibes out of any of it. However, there are some questionable, uh, you know, characters here. You know, you got your Eckhart Tolle and your. I always loved Ram Dass. I mean, really, there was a time where I called Ram Dass like my guru, essentially. So those were years and years ago, and I've come out of any type of looking to a guru. But let's see what we can find here. Okay, film guided meditations. So Samadhi guided meditations. The Pathless Path is another one here. Short guided meditations. We're gonna close out with the Samadhi meditation. So let's see. Oh wow, they're all an hour, except for the one that's an intro. So maybe we'll just play the intro. What do you guys think? Samadhi guided meditation series intro from 6 years.
These guided meditations have been created to be used freely by everyone. They reflect some of the core practices at the Samadhi Center and are just some of the many techniques that may be practiced to move people in the direction of Samadhi. I should point out that it may take many years to develop the concentration and equanimity required to reach that to which the meditations point. Be patient, determined, and most of all, be equanimous with where you are on your journey, because ultimately the path is the destination. There are two aspects, or you could say two dimensions, within meditation. There's the dimension of changing phenomena, which is generally thoughts, sensations, and feelings. And there's the dimension of consciousness, the one that is witnessing the phenomena. You could call these two aspects mindfulness and mind emptiness, or yin and yang. There are meditation techniques where you're doing something, and there's that part of the meditation which is beyond technique, beyond all doing. Together, these two parts of meditation, when in balance, are like the wings of a bird that carry you towards Samadhi. Yin and yang, mindfulness and mind emptiness, must be in balance, the way the spiral of a hurricane is in balance around the stillness in the center. The stillness within the spiral, or the jewel in the lotus, is a perfect symbol for meditation and Samadhi. The first dimension of meditation we will talk about is the yin aspect. It is the feminine aspect, surrendering, opening to the changing phenomena or energy of life. It's allowing, being equanimous with what is. It is an effortless letting go. The yang aspect of meditation is concentrating the mind, focusing single-pointedly. The yang aspect is the witnessing stillness in the center of the spiral, while the yin aspect is everything that is constantly changing. Both are practiced simultaneously. There's an aspect of meditation that is effortless, and an aspect that's effortful. Both are practiced at once, and even though this may seem contradictory, it is not. Mindfulness and mind emptiness, effort and non-effort, are practiced until they become one. Or more precisely, as they say in Zen, not one, not two. You simultaneously cultivate the power of total focus and concentration, along with deep surrender, relaxing into the moment. Your effort to stay present becomes so great that it's a complete surrender of your being. And your effortless surrender to the moment is so complete that it becomes continuous presence. There are literally hundreds of meditation techniques, but all techniques, regardless of the tradition, serve to cultivate two things: your ability to concentrate or stay present without the mind wandering, and your ability to develop equanimity or inner surrender. In this way, we purify the senses. We purify ourselves of sankharas or conditioned patterns. We'll start with the technique of observing the breath, the classic technique taught by the Buddha. Before you begin meditation, stretching can be helpful to prepare the body for long periods of sitting. If your mind is very busy, chanting can be a great way to focus and orient your consciousness inward. Do whatever works to get yourself into a relaxed, peaceful, and concentrated state. Turn off your phone and anything that could potentially distract you. Make an intention to meditate continuously, uninterruptedly, for whatever length of time you feel comfortable with. Observing the breath is extremely simple, the simplest thing, but surprisingly difficult to do. Sit as comfortably as possible on a cushion, meditation bench, or chair. Your spine should be straight so that energy can flow freely up it. An upright spine brings an alertness in the body. Once your spine is upright, relax the rest of your body. Pick a position for your hands, such as laying them on your knees. Always start with a beginner's mind. Let go of all ideas about meditation, and just observe the breath directly, without thought, as if you've never noticed it before. If you are new to this, try to sit for 15 minutes and work your way up to an hour. If you are an experienced meditator, try to sit for as long as you can. There are 3 guided meditation audio files. The guided meditations should not be thought of as separate practices or separate techniques. Each guided meditation will simply involve a deepening of the awareness of the breath. Once you've cultivated a greater degree of concentration and equanimity, then move to the next guided meditation and see how it feels. You may want to use this guided meditation for the first while until you become familiar with the practice, and eventually you can sit in silence without instruction.
All right, what do you guys think? Should I go for it? Should we
Start
go
with
for
a
it?
calm and peaceful
Guided
mind,
meditation number 1, breath as
relaxing
the bridge. Here's
deeply,
the thing, though.
yet being completely alert and present.
If I play this
Your
full
outer
thing
posture
out,
should remain
I
strong,
might
but
just
not
fall
rigid.
asleep.
Relaxed,
In which
but
case,
not slumping.
the next one will probably go, and
Observe the
then the next
natural
one,
breath.
and then the next one. So this could be
During
like
this
an all-night
meditation,
stream of just
do
the
not try to
meditations, and we
change
might
or
just all
manipulate the breath
sleep
in any
together.
way.
It might be like a metaversal orgy.
You're simply
All right, I'll keep
observing
it
this
PG.
one thing that's already
Here's what I
happening.
could do. I'll set an
Breath is
alarm
happening.
for an
You are
hour
just
from
noticing
now,
it,
and
cultivating the skills of
that way,
concentration and
you like
allowing.
that one. That way I can play this one out, and then actually end the stream. So I have a feeling I might fall asleep during this. Breath as the bridge, more like snores as the
As you
bridge
observe
to
the breath,
ether. But
don't be surprised
I
or
don't remember
frustrated
where
when
it
your
was.
mind
It may have been
wanders.
beside small. Okay. Okay. Well,
As soon as
it
you
might
notice
have
the
been
mind
here.
has
I just
wandered,
discovered this
bring
new
it back to the breath.
channel. Where is it at here?
Remain
Spine.
relaxed.
Before the meditation, this is kind of changing the vibe for a minute, but I'll give them a shout out. Spine Ticks. They were recommended to me, and they gave me a shout out. So shout out to them. They got me a few new subs, even though those subs will probably be gone by tomorrow. Shout out to YouTube. Appreciate the love. Let me give them some shout outs. I thought this was a pretty cool video. It was right around when I got in there, and thought it was pretty adorable. And then they gave me a shout out once or twice. So
That's represent. That's represent. That's represent. That's no regrets. Because he's Jerry, that's the G. Because he's Jerry, he's wild and he is free. Because he's Jerry, that gets the G. Because he's Jerry, he's wild and he is free.
Dude, that was out of control. That was so good. The song was so good.
That's the song that started it all, man. When I found out what the AI music could do, and I wrote the lyrics.
So there are other panels out here, folks, and they're just all over the place, really, at this point. Panels have become a real widespread thing at this point, and they should be.
You know, so I wanted to have some hand in that, man. But that was so much fun.
That's so epic.
All right, let's make something here for Logan. We're gonna share Midjourney here.
So they look like they were going over a lot of Midjourney stuff, which is really cool. I would like to do some streams on that as well, actually, going forward at some point. I've done like one ever, probably.
We have Sean of Source in the house, man. Thanks for popping in here, Sean. Spine Six, just having a good time. I mean, we're playing dog videos, man. We like dogs and cats. It's a good time over here. David saying it's the core proposal. Hey, I'm really glad you like that, David. You should check out suno.ai, and you can really make some cool stuff with that.
Yeah, that's what the
so
people
Raul's
want these
so we'll
days,
be making an image for Logan and for Raul.
You know, people love dog and cat videos these days. It's undeniable, and it's reasonable. It's understandable, understandable. All right, I'm gonna play another minute, and then we're gonna get onto the meditation, and that'll be it. I've said that I know like 3 times already, but
one last week. And do you see? Can you, Dave? I'm gonna be on another screen typing this, so just have this ready to read to me, okay, Dave? So let's get this going.
Who's breathing into the mic is what I want to know.
Okay, what's it say, Dave?
Oh, Dave, are you good, bro?
Oh yeah, we're good. It says the lizards of the coast.
Generate lizards of the coast.
Yep. Getting schooled by real gamers.
By real gamers. Okay.
Very interesting. All right.
That, well, you know, it's good to see I'm not the only one who gives mods to basically everybody. Which reminds me, I guess I gotta hand one out to the newbie in the chat. But I was thinking of making this new rule where like only people who've been on panel get wrenches. But then I realized, oh man, that's I don't know. Is that fair? It is though, right? I mean, it is fair because it's like I don't even always make people cam up, which I think should really be a must, really, right? To avoid any trolls or P bombers. If you don't know what P bombers are, take some guesses. But all right, I'm gonna again shut up. And
it sounds like he's giving code for Wizards of the Coast, which is they do D&D. So that's going to be interesting how this comes out.
Yeah.
Okay. Sean says he is a cat man himself. However, he also likes dogs. That's awesome, man. We love it all. That's awesome. Callie hit 250 tonight. That's great, man.
Oh, yeah. Well done, bro.
Thanks for everybody supporting everybody. All right, Dave, what do we say when we wait for the image?
Generating.
There we go.
Generating. Please wait.
Yeah, if you guys want to support, that's Spine Ticks, and it looks like. Oh man, no! Is he drinking Coca-Cola? Oh, come on, man! That's probably why Flow State was just out for days and days because it's all that soda and cigarettes, man. And no wonder he's sick. If that is true, if that is what happened there. But Dave collects. Yeah, looks like his name is Phil. That won't be easy to find Phil with just Phil there. I hate Comcast Dan and Uncanny Swag. Alrighty, well, all of these characters are new to me, so yeah. Anyway, oh yeah, I was gonna open this. It looked like there was an after party link here. Where did it go? Sensei After Party. Let's see what that's about. Before we move on. Okay, then.
Next, we have Rick Burleson.
Ah. All right, so we
Next,
got a
have David
collector.
Patel.
I got some cards still, actually.
Next, we have Craig Reynolds. This one will have to be replaced. John D'Acquisto. Ridiculously off center. That's a miscut.
Okay. All right. Well, I should hook my older sister up with my older sister does reselling and stuff, and she deals with a lot of collectors and whatnot. Anyway, all right. I'm way far off now at this point. Let's get back to center. No pun intended. Well, pun intended. Samadhi, guided meditation, breath as the bridge. And it's been playing this whole time in the background somehow, and I don't hear it. Weird. Oh, because I have this tab muted. That's probably why. Okay. Let's let it roll, folks. Much love and enjoy. I am your humble meditation enthusiast for the night. Hope you get some pleasure out of this. Peace, prosperity, pineal power, all those good things. And see you soon. Much love.
Start with a calm and peaceful mind. Relaxing deeply, yet being completely alert and present. Your outer posture should remain strong, but not rigid. Relaxed, but not slumping. Observe the natural breath. During this meditation, do not try to change or manipulate the breath in any way. You're simply observing this one thing that's already happening. Breath is happening. You are just noticing it, cultivating the skills of concentration and allowing. As you observe the breath, don't be surprised or frustrated when your mind wanders. As soon as you notice the mind has wandered, bring it back to the breath. Remain relaxed. The mind will wander, and you will bring it back to the breath. This is the meditation. Sometimes you might get lost in thoughts for a while. The practice is to become disinterested in any thought. Planning, remembering, worrying, fantasizing, regardless of what type of thought comes up, just let it go without judgment. You may experience thoughts that are judging your meditation or judging your present experience as being good or bad. Just let them go. As you sit for a period of time, hindrances will arise. Hindrances can come in the form of sleepiness or restlessness, maybe boredom, or pain and discomfort in the body. When attention is diverted to any particular phenomena, the practice is to be equanimous with what is. Simply let it be as it is and return to the breath. Sometimes, if pain becomes too great, it may be necessary to adjust your position, but with practice, your capacity to work with the hindrances will develop. You may notice that moving away from your pain sometimes makes it come back even stronger. Allowing pain to be as it is, opening to it fully, lets it arise, express itself, and pass away. Paradoxically, the way out of pain is to go into it and experience it fully. Another form of hindrance is wanting or expecting something to happen. Sometimes blissful feelings will arise, and the mind will try to cling to these experiences or recreate them. The same thing that applies to unpleasant sensations applies to pleasant sensations. Allow them to be as they are, relaxing into the moment, and always bringing focus back to the breath. Do not look left or right. Only see your meditation object, the breath. Observe the pulsation of the breath, the in and the out, expansion and contraction. Be sharp, lucid, present. Simply abide with the natural breath. The mind may want to do something more interesting. Don't let it become dull and repetitive. Feel the aliveness of the breath. Go into it. Notice every sensation connected to the breath, from gross sensations to the most subtle. When you observe the breath, maybe you will notice more air going in one nostril than another. Maybe there's a tightness somewhere in the body, constricting the breath. Maybe in the hara area, the center located approximately 2 inches below the navel. Or in the heart area, or in the throat, or any part of the body. Simply notice and allow it to be as it is. Notice how the stomach rises and falls. Is it deep or shallow? Is it changing in quality? Is it sometimes deep or sometimes shallow? Is it smooth and fluid, or is it choppy? It doesn't matter what you find, just notice. Don't try to manipulate the breath. Is the air going in the nostrils cooler than the air going out? Maybe there's a tickling sensation at the nostrils. Can you feel the pulse of the breath, like waves rising and falling on the ocean? Let the breath be free. Let it change, grow and evolve if it wants to. Let it become subtle or disappear completely if it wants to. Don't miss the changes. Notice them, no matter how subtle. Continue observing, patiently, persistently. It may take some time and practice to be able to stay with the breath without the mind wandering. In deep meditation, the flow of concentration is continuous, like the flow of oil being poured in a continuous stream. Egoic thoughts are interruptions in the flow of concentration towards the breath. Don't push away these thoughts. Don't repress them, or they will just come back in a different form. But at the same time, don't become interested in the thoughts. Otherwise, you'll soon be daydreaming. The middle way is neither pushing away nor grasping. Just observe the breath, and the thoughts will settle down on their own. They will lose power. The patterns of thinking will gradually lose energy when you don't feed them your consciousness. Don't feed the mind. You are using concentration on the breath to divert the energy away from the mind patterns. The breath can move unconsciously when it's not observed, or it can move consciously. Notice if the breath changes when you put your attention on it. Notice any subtle change when you bring consciousness to your breath. Conscious breath is pranic breath. It is a live breath. When you focus continuously on the breath, your inner energy might begin to increase. This may generate friction or some uncomfortableness. It may increase whatever patterns are in play. You may experience friction between your intention to stay with the breath and the old patterns of the mind. This friction may make you want to move, to interrupt the meditation process. But know that this friction is integral to meditation. It is the friction that creates the fire that burns up the self. It is the alchemy that transmutes the duality of your pain and pleasure into samadhi. Always be surrendering. Always be present. Let the breath anchor you in the now. Let the breath ground you. If you want to gain mastery over the mind, master the breath. There is only one breath, the breath that happens now. Let the breath take you deep into your being. Dive deep into the ocean of breath, of inner energy, into the pranic stream. If your mind has wandered, if some thought has interrupted the continuous awareness of the breath, the moment you notice it, you will actually be back at the breath. There's actually no doing when you return to the breath. You don't do anything to return to the breath. You are simply noticing what the mind is already doing and letting it go. The breath is profound, mysterious, but we take it for granted. We don't really inhabit the breath. We don't really feel the breath. Like most things, we perceive only our thoughts about it, not the breath itself. Conscience of meditation. Concentration and deep surrender. These are the two dimensions of meditation. Remain aware. Be patient. Focused. Remain aware. Remain equanimous. Relaxing. Present. People often get frustrated when the hindrances arise, and they feel that they're doing something wrong in their meditation. It's important to understand that the hindrances manifest because you are working correctly. They are a necessary part of excavating to the deeper levels of mind.
All right, that's all for tonight, folks. Much love, peace, prosperity, and pineal power. Good to see you, Wolfie. I'm out. 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 22 seconds. Much, much, much love. Take care, and see you soon. Get some rest, or if you're just getting up, have a great day. See you soon.